What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Evan, and I make videos about anything to do with making money in the stock market. So if that interests you guys, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss when I upload. Now in today's video, we're going to cover a different stock from usual. Now most of you guys know that I cover NEO pretty much on a daily basis because there's always catalysts pushing up NEO's share price. But today we're going to go over a stock that has a lot of potential and they've seen a lot of jumps in the past. But as of right now, they're kind of down and now could potentially be a good time to buy. And not only that, but there's a pretty big fund investing in this company, and that's actually ARK Invest. And if you guys aren't familiar with ARK Invest, it's kind of led by Cathie Wood. And she's been known to invest in very disruptive companies that have a lot of potential in the future, and they potentially have a lot of growth at some point. But before we actually jump too deep into it, if you guys wouldn't mind going down and hitting the like button, I would really appreciate it, and it lets me know that you guys enjoy these video updates every day. So again, if you guys wouldn't mind going down and hitting the like button, I would really appreciate it. But now to get into it, the company that we're talking about here is Zoom. And if you guys aren't familiar with what Zoom is, they're basically a video communication company, and they allow people to FaceTime. And this can help for anything from teleconferencing to telecommuting, or even distance learning, which is what a lot of people are using Zoom for right now. And it's basically a company designed around video chatting and being able to see somebody through your webcam. So like FaceTime, for example, or Skype is another example. But in recent months and within the last year, I'm sure you guys know about the whole pandemic thing and how everybody has to be distanced. Well, with a company like Zoom, this allows people to still continue working and still continue having conference meetings and things like that and still continue with education because a bunch of people can join in on one Zoom call and you can see everybody's face all at once. Now for where Zoom is trading right now, they're right around $381. And on the day, they're up almost 5%. Now, you don't really get a good example of where Zoom is trading at right now just on the one-day chart because there's actually been a few things that have been affecting their share price. But when we take a look at the one-week chart, that's where you can see better on how Zoom has been moving. And they're actually up around 11% on the one-week chart. And of course, you can see early on they were trading pretty flat in the week, and then they started shooting up towards these last couple days. And this is actually because Zoom is doing a secondary stock offering, and they're doing this to raise some capital. Now, before we actually jump into what they're raising that capital for and how much they're going to be raising, I first wanted to show you guys what ARK Invest is doing with Zoom and how many shares they're actually adding to their portfolio. So this here is lucid tracking, and if you guys want to sign up, it's totally free, and you can basically track what ARK Invest is investing in. And you can see here on both their ARK K and their ARK W ETFs, they're investing in Zoom in both of these. And ARK K is basically their innovation ETF, and it's basically just their broad ETF with companies that are very disruptive. And ARK W is more your internet ETF, so just things that are based on the internet, like Slack, Zoom, and things like that. And so you can see that ARK Invest has shares of Zoom in both ETFs. But when we actually look at how many shares they're adding, on just their normal innovation ETF, they've added about 10,000 shares in the last day. And then before that, they added about almost 400,000 shares. And they're continually adding more shares on a daily basis. And typically it's about 20 to 30,000 shares, at least as of the last couple of weeks. Now for their internet ETF, they really don't have too many shares as compared to their innovation ETF. Right now, as of the 13th, they have about 330,000 shares. And I'm kind of surprised by this. I would think that they would have more shares in their internet ETF as compared to their normal ETF. So I suppose if you want more exposure to Zoom and you're investing in one of ARK's ETFs, I would probably suggest investing in their innovation ETF. Now, I don't know what the percentages are and what their holdings are in both of these ETFs. I would assume they probably have a bigger position in their internet ETF, but I haven't really looked into that. I'm just more showing you guys that they are investing in Zoom and they're adding shares almost on a daily basis. And it seems like ARK has a pretty good idea of where companies are going. And they have a relatively good track record of buying companies that have done pretty well in the past. But now you might be wondering why Zoom actually went up both yesterday and today. And this is because they actually did an offering and they're trying to raise about $1.5 billion. And this announcement came on Tuesday where they're trying to get new capital from the sale of 4.2 million new shares of their stock. Now, of course, this is going to be diluting shareholders, and this offering, much like you would expect with other companies, typically the stock goes down. But obviously, as we see, the exact opposite happened, and their stock actually jumped 5.7% on Tuesday. And then yesterday, they also went up, and today they're up about 6%. Now, with 4.2 million shares being added, this would dilute existing shareholders by about 1.4%. So it's really not a big hit, but to actually see them go up despite this news happening, it's kind of odd, and you wouldn't think that would happen. But I suppose investors are taking into account what Zoom is going to use this money for, and the fact that this should help increase business in the long run. And so it gets investors excited, and that's probably why we saw their stock rise the last few days. And then as of yesterday, Zoom actually increased their offering to 1.75 billion, and this was with 5.1 million shares as compared to 4.2 that they had originally announced on Tuesday. Now, if you're wondering how much this would dilute as compared to the 4.2 million shares, this would only be about a 1.6% dilution rate. So again, really not that big of a dilution. And from that announcement, that's part of why we saw them increase yesterday and today as well. And then one other big key factor that shot Zoom up yesterday was that they actually announced that they have sold 1 million Zoom phone seats since their product launched 2 years ago. And this is a pretty significant milestone for Zoom, and it shows as a reminder that Zoom has a lot of potential, not only now, but into the future as well, especially if they can really up these numbers of selling these Zoom phone seats. I think then Zoom is going to get a lot more investor interest. But according to Morgan Stanley, which we know puts out price predictions for a lot of different companies, they added that the market for Zoom has likely become a little too negative, and especially with the whole pandemic thing still rampant, they think that Zoom should probably be priced higher than it is right now. And I'm totally in agreement with this, because it's not like the pandemic's really slowed down at all. We know a lot of state officials and different governors are trying to get people to stay home more. And so it doesn't really make sense that Zoom really pulled back as much as they did, because since their high in October, I believe, Zoom is down about 41%. And again, that doesn't really make sense since the pandemic hasn't really slowed down at all. And there's also been about 75 million and potentially up to 100 million people that have used Zoom at this point. And again, this is anything from doing conferences online to doing online education and anything pretty much in between. So Zoom is a very vital company as of right now with this whole pandemic. Now, I think it's possible that in the future, once everything kind of slows down and people get back out into the world and they're not stuck at home, I think Zoom could see a price reduction and they could be trading pretty flat. But at least as of right now, like I mentioned, I think Zoom is pretty undervalued. And I think they have a lot more potential, especially with everything the way it is right now. But to go back to their secondary offering that they're doing, again, they're trying to raise $1.5 billion and potentially up to $1.75 billion. And this is at 10 times their IPO price. And they actually said that they would use the proceeds towards acquisitions or strategic investments. And I do think investors are seeing this and they see the potential that Zoom has. And they know that Zoom could really put this money to good use to really expand their business even more. And they're also taking advantage of a surge of investor interest, and not only in Zoom specifically, but in a lot of internet and tech companies, because Zoom itself has actually quintupled in value last year. And they're also already profitable. And so doing the secondary offering is really only going to pad their balance sheet and really increase their cash on hand. And as of October, Zoom had $730.5 million of cash. And when you compare this to just in January, they only had $283.1 million. So they've just about 3x their cash and equivalents on hand. And with this, they also have a market cap of around $100 billion. And then again, to get more in depth of what they would actually use this money for, they said their plans are to use the money for operating expenses and capital expenditures, and they may also use a portion of the net proceeds for acquisitions or strategic investments in complementary businesses, products, services, or technologies. And then when we also look at Zoom's revenue growth, they've actually topped 350% in each of the past 2 quarters. And they actually said in their earnings report in November that the fiscal 4th quarter growth is going to approach 330%. But then by mid-year, their growth is expected to moderate dramatically as they have to deal with much tougher comparisons. And also the likelihood that people are going to be returning back to work and back into their offices and back to school where they won't have to be using video calls anymore. So again, when that happens, I think we could see a price reduction in Zoom's share price. But at least as of right now, like I mentioned, I think they are pretty undervalued for what they're doing. They're a very disruptive company, and they came in pretty clutch when people needed something like this, because I don't think people were going to be FaceTiming with their iPhones and doing conference calls and attending school using FaceTime. So there needed to be something where it would allow a bunch of people to join one call at one time. And that's where Zoom came in and they kind of saved the day. And so I think with where Zoom has been and how much they've increased, and then of course they dropped about 41% since their high at $568 in mid-October. So even though they are trading way below that $568 mark, I think they should be worth a bit more than they are trading at right now. And you guys can disagree with me on this, but with the way the pandemic's been, and with it not really getting any better, I don't see why a company like Zoom would drop so drastically in share price when they really had a lot more potential to go. But for those of you who made it this far into the video, are you guys invested in Zoom at all? And if you guys are, let me know your average share cost and how many shares you have down in the comments. I'd be curious to know if any of you guys are actually invested in Zoom. And if you're not invested in them, leave me a comment on whether you would potentially invest in them at some point. And then if you guys haven't signed up for Webull, make sure you guys sign up using the link in the description. And when you sign up and deposit $100, you'll get 4 free stocks. Also, if you guys want to join my Discord, I'll leave a link down in the description and a link in the top pinned comment. And if you guys want to join that and chat among like-minded people, feel free to join because it's totally free. And if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like because it really does help out the channel. And with that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you back here in the next one. Bye.